This is rental car number 130, and today I'm driving the 2019 Nissan Rogue S. This is a subcompact SUV that seats 5 and retails for around $22,000. Real quick, I just want to point out that the Nissan Rogue and the Nissan Rogue Sport are actually two totally separate cars. Also, this is the S trim level, so it's the Nissan Rogue Sport S. S meaning this is the base model, so it doesn't quite have all the bells and whistles that I typically have in my rentals. But there's still quite a bit to talk about, especially since the Rogue Sport has only been out since 2017, so it's kind of a newer vehicle. Real quick, I also want to point out that this does have 16-inch aluminum wheels, and, well, I don't know about you, but I kind of like the hubcaps on this one. They're a little bit unique. Under the hood, the Rogue Sport has a 2-liter 16-valve 4-cylinder engine. By comparison, the Rogue has a 2.5-liter 4-cylinder engine. This also has a Xtronic CVT, or a continuously variable transmission with manual shift technology. That means you can pop that gear shift over to the left and then push up or down if you want to shift the gears manually. Not a whole lot of horsepower on this one, only 141 at 6,000 RPMs, but you do get eco mode capability and some pretty decent gas mileage. 25 miles per gallon in the city, 32 on the highway with a 28 combined rating. Your fuel tank is going to hold 14.5 gallons and it takes regular unleaded gas. So by me in the Chicago suburbs right now, gas is creeping up to about $3.12 a gallon. So that means, at least by me, you could fill this thing up for about $45. Alright, so enough with the numbers and the specs. Let's talk about what it's actually like to drive this car in the real world, and I want to touch on 3 things pretty quickly: handling, acceleration, and cabin noise. Starting with handling, this thing is pretty good. It corners well, it feels comfortable around long curves on the highway, and you don't really feel the bumps in the road too severely. Acceleration is also decent. It's a fairly quick SUV, but for something smaller like this, I was really expecting something kind of comparable to the Nissan Maxima, which I find really fun to drive. The Rogue Sport is just, well, it's just average. So it performs well in daily driving, but you shouldn't expect it to be the quickest car on the road. Cabin noise, though, is really good. I did have to bump up my podcast a little bit while I was on the interstate going 70 miles an hour, but it was only about 10% more on the volume, so that's pretty good, especially for a car at this price point. So overall, I think the Rogue Sport performs really well. But just remember, this is a $22,000 car, so don't expect to be blown away when you get behind the wheel. So here's the key fob. It's a pretty simple setup. Feels like it's made out of really nice quality materials. It's kind of a high-grade plastic. 3 buttons on the front: lock, unlock, and a panic button. Nissan's logo on the back. And you actually get a physical key with this car, so you just have to press this little silver button right here, and the key flips out. And you'd start the car up just like you'd expect. It's right here on the side of the steering wheel. Here's the steering wheel. It's not completely a circular shape. If you'll see on the bottom, you get a kind of a small cutout right here from the circle. So it should continue here, but it doesn't. Number of buttons on the steering wheel. You have a volume controls right here, along with a directional keypad right here to interact with the screen in the center display. You also have dedicated track buttons to jump to different tracks or different chapters on the touchscreen in the center of the vehicle, and then a back button as well. Over here on the right hand side, you have your cruise controls. It's kind of a similar shape to that directional keypad on the left hand side. Cancel button in the center, set your speed, reduce your speed, and then the on off button for the cruise is right here. You also have a voice assistant technology, and you can activate that by pressing this button right here, and then you can answer and hang up phone calls by pressing this small button right here. These feel pretty good. It's got kind of a rubbery feel to it, and I know they're pretty responsive, so I'm pretty happy with these. Gauge cluster is also pretty nice. You have 2 large dials. On the left-hand side, you have your RPMs and your temperature gauge. On the right-hand side, you have your speedometer and then your fuel gauge all the way at the bottom. And then in the middle, you have a pretty nice size center screen. It's got some pretty bright and crisp colors. Up in the upper left-hand corner, you have your clock. You'll see that it's 12 o'clock right now. You have a temperature gauge to show you the temperature of the outside the vehicle. And then down below, you have the P, stands for park. That's what gear we're in. Let me shift through those gears real quick. Reverse, neutral, drive, and then sport mode. You also see that we have 368 miles until the fuel tank is empty, and then the odometer all the way at the bottom shows that this car has about 12,000 miles on it. The screen in the center has a number of screens on it, and I'm just going to cycle through them by pressing this directional keypad right here. So right now we have it on the average speed screen, but we can also see a trip counter, fuel economy screen. You can see what's playing over the big display right here via your Bluetooth connection on this screen. And then you can have other settings to see the technology on this car to help you drive the vehicle. I really like this though because it's so simple to change things. So for example, to change the clock, there's a dedicated menu button right here, and we can adjust the time really easily just by pressing the keys right here. My long-winded point here is that it's really simple to turn on and off features on this car because the system is organized just so well. Over to the left, we have standard controls. You have your window controls and your door locks tucked right here, kind of behind this handle. Mirror controls are up top, along with a door latch and a door lock. And then up on the dash, we have our trip reset counter, and then buttons to adjust the brightness of the display up here in the gauge cluster. Down below there, we have a single button to turn on and off traction control. You can activate eco mode by pressing this button to get a little bit better fuel economy. Below there, we have the releases for the fuel cap and the hood, and then a manual parking brake right here. Side view mirrors are a pretty decent size. You do have blindside detection on this vehicle, but it's not in the typical spot in the actual glass of the mirror itself. It's actually right here. It's a large yellow indicator right here that will illuminate when someone is in your blind spot. And as I mentioned before, you can turn that technology on and off pretty simply by just going to the driver assistance screen right here in the center gauge cluster screen. And you also get that same technology on your side view mirror on the passenger side. Up top, we have a sunglass holder that has kind of a felt-like material on the inside. Two lights right here, so you can adjust them, or I should say turn them on and off by pressing these buttons right here, or a single button to activate them both, and also turn on the light in the back of the vehicle. And then you have a simple control right here to adjust whether or not the lights are going to turn on when you open up a door. Below there we have the rear view mirror. No buttons on here of any kind, just the standard switch right here to toggle it back and forth if someone is in your behind you and shining their brights on you. And then up top we do have a sun visor, and then you have a mirror right here. No light, which I'm actually kind of surprised by. Below there we have two large vents and your hazard button right here. And then below there we have our center display. It's got a CD player right up top. Nothing inside of it. Sometimes, I'd say maybe 1 in 20 rentals, someone leaves a CD for me, but not today. The center display is a pretty decent size. Let me show you my cell phone. Here's my cell, and you'll see the screen is just slightly bigger than my cell phone. And I just turned it on. You have dedicated buttons on the left and the right side to jump to all the important features. It's a pretty decent display. If you'll notice though, it's a little bit dim. So that's because it's in night mode. This button right here, you see the sun and the moon. When you hit the moon at nighttime, it'll actually decrease the brightness of the display automatically, and then during the day you can increase the brightness just by pressing a single button. Seems like a small feature to have, but it's actually really nice. I find these screens to be pretty distracting late at night because they're so bright, so it's nice that you can adjust that really quickly with just a touch of a single button. Besides that, there's not a whole lot of exciting features on this. You get your standard screens for your phone and your audio. You have a connection screen to connect the car via Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, and then an information screen that'll show you a little bit of information about the vehicle, but not a ton. You know what I did like about this screen? That it's really easy to connect my phone via Bluetooth. It only took me about 10 seconds to get it connected. And, you know, the connection was stable, and I was able to listen to my audiobook pretty easily on the full drive out here, so that's always a positive thing. But if you're looking for the most high-tech display with the most apps on it and the most things to play around with, well, this probably isn't for you, but it is functional and pretty easy to use. Below there we have our climate controls, nice big dials to adjust both the intensity of the fan and the actual temperature, and you kind of have a rubbery like material on these dials, so it makes it really easy to grab and to adjust. You also have big buttons to adjust where the vents are blowing, and then large buttons for your front and rear defrosters, and then, you know, a button to close or open the vents to the outside. Pretty nice controls, and I was able to get the car to a pretty comfortable temperature within only a few minutes. And that's pretty good because it's only 50 today and it was supposed to be around 80, so I wasn't dressed appropriately. So great climate controls. Below there, kind of tucked underneath the lip, we have a small storage area. Right, pretty good for a cell phone, along with an auxiliary jack and a USB port, and then a power port right here, although you will need an adapter to take advantage of that. Behind there we have our gear shift. I mentioned this before, but this does have sport mode capability. That just means that you can shift the car into drive and then pop it over to the left and shift those gears manually by pressing up or down while you're driving. You also get a rear view camera, so if I put it into reverse, you'll notice the rear view camera automatically pops up, gives you a guide to help you drive in reverse. So when you turn the wheel, you'll see, kind of gives you an indication of where the car is going. And the resolution is pretty good. You'll see we have a car driving behind us right now, and it's fairly easy to make that out. I wouldn't say this is the best resolution I've ever seen, but you know, it gets the job done, and it's color and gives you a nice wide view of what's behind you. So let me shift the car back into park. Behind there we have 2 cup holders and then another storage area that's pretty good to keep a cell phone. Behind there we have our center armrest. Opens up pretty easily. And then down below you'll see you have a pretty decent sized storage space along with an additional power port and a USB port, and then what it looks like a small sort of pocket that was probably perfect to keep some change or maybe some pens. And then let's close things out by taking a look at the glove box. You know, pretty large size. I'm not sure what this is. Looks like someone left us a little bit of paper towel. But you get your owner's manuals in here. Looks like Nissan also gave us a first aid kit. That's kind of nice. It's wrapped in plastic, so give me a second and I'll take it out of the plastic. So this is a pretty decent first aid kit. You get scissors, looks like burn cream, bandages, towelettes, like tweezers and a magnifying glass, gauze. I mean, this is a legit first aid kit, which is nice to see. I'm actually seeing these more and more on the vehicles I drive, and I think it's a really good trend. You know, this also has Velcro on the back, which makes it perfect to stick to the trunk space in the back. It really will grab onto that nicely and allows you to keep it in the rear of the vehicle and not have to worry about it jostling around. Owner's manual is also pretty nice and thick, which is good. It's got plenty of information about the vehicle, and I don't know why someone left us an envelope, but they did. Let's see. Anything special in here? No, it is empty, unfortunately. You never know what you're going to get in one of these rental cars. So anyway, nice big storage area for the glove box and some interesting stuff inside. Alright, so I jumped in the rear of the vehicle, and just for fun, I pushed this driver's seat back all the way. So it's at the max distance that it can go, and surprisingly, I still fit back here. So my knees are actually touching that seat, but you know, I'm 6 feet tall and I got pretty long legs, and despite me having to push against this seat, I'm actually fairly comfortable. So that's a good thing for a small SUV like this. There's not a whole lot of amenities back here. There's no pocket on the back of the driver's seat. There is a pocket on the back of the passenger seat. It's kind of small, and this is kind of a synthetic-like material, but it does have a little give to it, so you can get some stuff back here if you want to. There's also 2 dedicated vents on the back of that center armrest for the front seat passengers, and that's nice, but no power ports or any other USB ports down here like you see on some other SUVs. On the door, you have your own window control, and then a door lock and a door latch. And then up top, you have a handle. And the same thing on the passenger side as well. Handle, door lock, door latch, and a window control. Last thing I want to look at is the center armrest. Let's see. Bolts down pretty easily and has 2 cup holders in it. And then let's take a look at the car seat anchors. And you'll see they have a removable plastic piece right here. So when someone is sitting in here, this shouldn't butt up against them too much. And then it just removes pretty easily. That popped up nicely. And then you reveal the car seat anchor. And when they're this shallow and easy to get access to, oh man, this thing is on tight. Let me try one more time. There we go. So that wasn't totally easy, but it should be easy to install a car seat back here because these are so exposed and so easy to get access to once you get this plastic piece off. Alright, so let's close things out by taking a look at the hatch. As you'll see, you get a nice storage space back here. It's a good size. You should be able to get groceries, suitcases, maybe a set of golf clubs back here pretty easily. One thing I don't like, though, is that it includes Nissan's shelf system back here, so the floor actually comes apart in two places, and you're supposed to be able to set this up in different ways so that you can stack items back here and take advantage of all the space in the rear of the Rogue Sport, but if I'm being honest, I've never been able to get this thing to work very well. Underneath this sort of modular system is the actual floor, and it's a very thin piece of plastic. Underneath there is the spare tire and the tools you'll need to change the spare. I do want to note, though, that this is super thin, and even on my Rogue Sport, which is fairly new, I already noticed it was starting to basically bow a little bit, and I had to use my hands to force it back into place, so I wouldn't expect this to last very long. Thankfully, though, you do have some other options back here. Those rear seats do fold down. You just have to pull up on these little latches right here, and the seats fold down pretty easily. Although I did notice you do have to scoot the driver and passenger seat forward a little bit to get those seats to collapse. But once you get them collapsed, you'll see that you have a much larger storage space back here to take advantage of. And also, you do have a privacy shield. Thankfully, this comes off really easily. You just have to give it a gentle pull to get it to come off the door, and then it just falls away. Super easy. Alright, so that's pretty much everything end to end on the 2019 Nissan Rogue Sport S. I drove this car for about 3 days. I think I put almost 400 miles on it, so I spent plenty of time behind the wheel. And given that, I think I'm going to give this one 2 stars. Now, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of good things to like about this vehicle. For one, it's fairly comfortable to drive, and 2, it has some decent technology, but I just wasn't very impressed with the quality of this car, and to be honest, I don't see why you wouldn't spend an extra maybe $1,500. That's really all you would need to bump up to the Nissan Rogue as opposed to the Rogue Sport. Anyway, that's just my take on this. If you disagree, please let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you join me next time when I rent and review my 131st rental car. I'll see you then.